Hey folks, this is Jake from So We Flow, and you're listening to the Why We Move podcast. We speak to incredible movers from all sorts of disciplines to share their stories and give you practical and inspirational advice on movement and living a happy, healthy life. We welcome beginners and experts, introverts and extroverts, fanatics and casuals to better themselves and inspire others. Today we're talking about slacklining, overcoming fear, and general adventure with Jonas Konijnenberg, who is not only a So We Flow mover, but someone I kind of feel close to and a friend to, even though we've never actually met in person. So thanks for joining us, Jonas. It's an absolute pleasure to have you on. If you just want to give yourself like a little introduction, that'll be awesome.
Yeah, thank you so much, Jake, for inviting me for this. So I'm Jonas Konijnenberg, a pretty hard name for non-Dutch. It literally means rabbit mountain. Often people believe it means like king of the mountain. So I'll be happy to keep up that myth. But it's Rabbit Mountain, honestly. So and I'm 30. I turned 30 last year. I'm living in the Netherlands. I'm a grown Dutchie. I actually have some English roots as well from around Bristol. My dad is half English, and I'm since 11 years. I'm slacklining, and I'm currently PE teacher for high school and elementary school, and that's basically my life.
Yeah, awesome, man. So, just tell us a little bit about like how you got into movement in whatever form.
Yeah, so I heard from my mom that the moment I was a baby, the doctor was holding me, and the doctor said, "Wow, this is one chunk of muscle. This boy needs to move. You got to use that body." And then, I always was running, and my mom said I could run earlier than I could walk. I started walking when I was 9 months old. They say it's pretty early.
Yeah, definitely.
So I was always outside, and I guess I started with like playing soccer when I was like 6. I really liked that because it was just with a bunch of friends running behind the ball and playing outside. When I got a bit older, I started exploring things like baseball and more like judo. Is that the right word?
Judo,
yeah, on the tatami. Not the wrestling, but the martial arts.
Throwing,
but none of them were really something that I was like really like feeling the fire. And then I saw the movie Billy Elliot. And I was like, hey, after that movie, Mom, I want to do ballet. That looks so fun. Just to jump around a little bit and have no goal, per se, like scoring a goal. That's what I meant. Because all the sports I did was, based on like winning at that time. So I started doing, and that was really fun. I really liked it. After a year, my teacher said, hey, he has no experience, she told my mom, but he has so much feeling for movement. I would like to let him try to do audition for the National Ballet School and the Dutch National Ballet. So I followed some boys training of like 4 weeks. And it's like on Saturdays, it was intense training. And afterwards, you could do an audition. And again, they said there, hey, you have no long, you can see you're not a professional dancer yet. I was 12 at that time. Normally we want boys to do audition and when they're 10 or 9. But we would like to let Jonas do audition if he would also like that. Because he has the feeling. I had zero flexibility. And that was also the problem at the same time because I was doing a lot of cycling as well and speed skating at that time. And from that, your joints get pretty stiff. And my dad is, we call it like a broom. So that's how stiff he is. Well, my dad is like a broom. So I did the ballet audition, and yeah, they said like, I'm sorry, but it's physically impossible with your joints. They have a lot of strength. They don't bend, and that's what they want, especially my ankles.
Yeah, sure.
So that dream was over. It was
I
a pretty
wasn't
big bump.
I wasn't expecting you to say ballet.
It happened, man. I was
Yeah, I
feeling
know.
it.
I mean, I know a few guys that were into it when they were younger, but I've never really talked in any detail about it. Like, I guess at the time, was it something that you just wanted to do? You saw it and you wanted to do it, and you didn't. Was there any kind of pressure from friends, because it's obviously not a typical thing to do for a boy, right?
There was nothing at all, no pressure. It was literally me. I saw the Billy Elliot movie, and it looked so much fun. There's this liberation of just, yeah, you have a space and you start moving in the space without any reason, just because you feel it, And that looked so much. I want to try that.
Amazing. So then
That's
what happened? What happened then? So you couldn't get into the school. Then what happened from there?
Well, at the same time, my speed skating trainer, he was like celebrating, because he was like, yeah, you need those stiff ankles for speed skating, and you're doing great. Train some more in our sport. So I stepped up my speed skating game. I was strong enough to, if you reach a certain level, you're allowed to train on the kind of the pro hours.
Mm-hmm.
I got some extra training hours. I was training at that time 4 times a week. I made it to the regional selection. Is that the regional team?
Yeah, sure.
And then that year I progressed a lot again, and I joined the national championships, which is a youth swing in the Netherlands.
Mm-hmm.
I became, the score was 16th. But then the year after, I was in a really strong age group, age year, and all my teammates were just slightly better than I was. And I dropped out of the trainings group. There was only space for 5 guys, and I was number 6. There was no space for me, so I kind of also dropped out of there. I was still training, but you're not training with your best friends. I had to train alone instead of training with 5 guys that are compatible to me. So yeah, that was kind of a lost race,
Yeah, sure. How did speed skating arise? Like, where did that come from?
In my childhood, there was a lot of so the Netherlands has a huge speed skating tradition, and at that time there were quite some strong winters after each other.
Mm-hmm.
So I fed up with, and my mom also used to speed skate, so it's something that, yeah, was very easy for me to get into.
Yeah, sure.
And yeah, I guess speed skating is our national sport.
I had no idea that was the case.
Well, look back in the last Olympics. Sometimes it's embarrassing, because out of 20 Olympic medals there's only one other nationality scoring one. All the rest is Dutch speed.
Oh, really? So what happened with the speed skating career then?
So kind of bleeded out a little bit. I still did it in the winters because it was fun, I was pretty good in it, and it was my identity at that time, because I had privilege in school, because I was kind of like a professional, semi-professional. I didn't make money with it. I was like 15 years old, but I was doing national championships, so I had privileges at school that I could make homework when other kids had to do something else.
Mm-hmm.
So it was my identity at that time. I was really good in running as well. I still own all the track records in all the schools that I participated.
No way.
Physical the PE teacher school, which is pretty crazy.
What, at the school you teach now?
No, not the high school, but the college where I studied.
Right. What, so you have the records at school and at college as well?
Yeah. But running was never. I was really good in it, but it wasn't fun for me.
Yeah.
With speed skating, you go fast. With running, it's just like, whew. gotta keep on running, you know?
Yeah, man, for sure. So you talked about obviously speed skating becoming your identity. I think that's like,
Yeah.
obviously we've got a long way to go before we reach slacklining, right? But I just wanted to butt in and say, like, how do you feel we can create like the difference between our identity and like the movement practices we do? Because I think so many people almost do tie it into their identity, and it's not always a good thing, right?
No, man. If I would do something else at that time, I was super insecure. I didn't, because I was super good in what I did. So if I would do something else, like I remember we had a wrestling workshop at school, and I was just shit scared to lose my my name of, hey, I'm the best in everything, you know.
Yeah.
So yeah, and at that time I wasn't really exploring anything else. It was all focused on the speed skating. And when the worst thing about that is that I had my identity because I was really good in it and better than others. So the moment I dropped out of that, I wasn't training with the best anymore. So I kind of lost my level. I was feeling bad about myself.
Yeah, sure. I think even obviously you're talking about like crossing over into different disciplines, but even within like a day-to-day practice, sometimes we stay within our comfort zone, and a lot of the time it is just to, I don't want to say, it's almost like to feel good about yourself, or not, or maybe not feel good about yourself but not feel bad about yourself, if you know what I mean. And we're a lot of the times like we do avoid failure, right? But like failure is what allows us to grow and become better at what we do.
Yeah, for sure. It's all about it, you know? That's where we start learning.
Yeah, absolutely. So how did we go from speed skating to slacklining then? What happened in between that time?
So there's one more other thing that came in between.
Of course there is. Of course there is.
No, I keep getting an identity. I was still pretty good in it, but hey, there's this other sport that is pretty close in endurance, and you just need a lot of power and lung capacity. And my dad was really good in it, and he was a team manager in a cycling team. So I lost my place in the cycling team. So I was like, hey, let's pick up my bike and start cycling. So I did for basically from my 15th to my 19th, like really intense. I trained like 20 hours a week. I cycled nearly like 15,000 kilometers a year, so like 10,000 miles. I did international races in France, like not like Tour de France, but for my age group, I was a junior at that time. It was like one level lower. So I was as well pretty good. I did the national championships as well. I had short hair with jet. I had arms as big as twigs.
Yeah.
So now I'm like 70 kilos. At that time, at my peak point, I weighed 56 kilos.
Wow, that's very light at 19 years old, eh?
That's like 115 pounds or so.
Yeah, crazy. So you were doing huge, big endurance races at that time then?
Yeah.
Wow, crazy.
Yeah,
So that seems like a very different reality to the world that you live in now.
Exactly. It's kind of the opposite, you know?
Yeah, for sure. So how did you get to where you are now then?
Yeah, so I finished high school and I started studying to become PE teacher. I realized like, I cannot keep up my cycling career anymore. It's just for fun. I couldn't practice it 20 hours anymore. So I said, hey, I'm going to stop with this, which was really hard because my dad was my team manager. So that was definitely like a big struggle, you know, also to be honest to him, like, hey, for myself, I'm gonna do something different.
Yeah, sure.
Probably that's the moment that I stepped into my own power. I released myself from any kind of pressure that I had. And there was one summer that I had like nothing that I was doing because other people want me to do it.
Mm-hmm.
And I think I wanted to do. And that summer, one of my old neighborhood boys, he knew I was studying for PE teacher, and this was 2010, and he was doing kayaking a lot. And the kayak school, they saw in the outdoor fair, they saw somebody selling slacklines, and they bought one, and they gave it to him. And he was like, "Hey, you want to join me slacklining?" And I'm like, "What?" But at that moment, I had nothing to do. I was free spirit.
Yeah, sure.
So, yeah, I don't know what it is. Sounds fun. Let's try it. And I really sucked in it. It's like, what is this? I cannot do this. He was doing a bunch of tricks, like laying on his back and kneeling down. I was like, that looks so cool. I wanna master this. I wanna try this.
Sure.
And at the same time, I was looking up. So I just started with the teaching school, and
Mm-hmm.
I was still this super skinny cyclist. I just came out of my cycling career. My body was transforming because I was all of a sudden doing gymnastics, and my back was really overloaded because I gained 5 kilograms that year just on muscles.
Mm-hmm.
And I was looking really up against all the cool surf dudes because they were getting all the girls, they were looking cool, they were living their lives, But I was like, at the same time, like, hey, I cannot just become them. I got to become me in a way,
Yeah, for sure.
I was doing slacklining, so I was like, let's try that.
I think, especially like in your late teens and your 20s, a lot of what drives us to do the things we do is sort of comparing ourselves to other people, right?
For sure, you're exploring yourself, you're becoming mature, and you're like, okay, seeing different options, and you're trying to make some kind of, you're figuring out who you want to become.
For sure.
Yeah.
So how, obviously, for people that haven't seen Jonas on a slackline, he's come a long way since that first day where he's absolutely terrible. And I think, to be honest, I've only tried a slackline a few times before we met, and you really kind of like got me interested in sort of watching the videos and like checking it out. And I think until you do it, you don't even have a fraction of an understanding of what it takes. Like, obviously, when you first tried it, you were very physically proficient in all these sports, but it still kind of kicked your ass, right? And I think would be the same for me. Like, I think I don't approach new things like that with like arrogance anymore, but definitely in the past, I would have been like, oh, I can do that easy. And slackline can certainly tell you who's boss very quickly.
Yeah. You're really, slacklining is the tool to train your persistence,
Yeah, for sure.
You need to keep on trying, and that's what will actually make you better in it.
Yeah, sure. So what was the process in terms of getting you to like the level of skill that you have now? Like, what was the journey? How long did it last? Like, were you training specifically, or was it kind of just, it happened over time?
Yeah, well, because I was teaching for PE teacher, I was definitely looking for possibilities with slacklining as well, in terms of job opportunities and ways how I can like contribute something in education. And anyway, I saw like this window of opportunity with slacklining, and like, maybe if I become really good in this, I can make things happen,
Mm-hmm.
It was an extra motivation, and I actually skipped classes in college for a PE teacher, and all my teachers knew because I was slacklining in front of the school.
Oh, they could see you doing it.
Yeah, if they would ask me about it, I'm like, hey, I can study anatomy also in the night, but right now I can only slackline.
Why did you feel there was an opportunity in slacklining? Was it because it was quite uncommon?
Yeah, it was
Yeah.
just there were no rules with slacklining yet. There were only climbing cracks were really doing it because you had to make your own slackline. There were no slackline systems that commercial slacklines only were coming in 2008, and then there were only ratchet systems.
So was it like, I think thing in my head that reminds me most of a slackline is what lorries use to tie on like cargo onto the back of the lorry, right?
Yeah, that's how the first commercial slackline got shaped.
Really?
They realized, hey, we can just use a towing strap, a span set to make a slackline, and they put a print on it and they sold it as a slackline, and that's how for many people like me, it was more accessible.
Yeah, sure. So let's fast forward. I mean, rewind even. So you're at school, like you're supposed to be doing your training, but meanwhile you're just outside in the grounds doing some slacklining training.
Yeah.
Carry on. Take us from there.
And then school was out, and everybody started drinking beer in the school bar, and for the student thing, where beer was only $1.
Yeah, sure.
And I kept on training because I was like, I need to master this. And I was only a year into this, and I had a dream to join the World Cups. And at that time, it was really the main sport of slacklining was stricklining, where you side slackline of like 10 meters long. And you start jumping on it. You land on your butt. You do a butt bounce. That's how you call it. You land back on your feet. You land on your chest. You do a chest bounce, and you do flips in between and half rotations and all kind of. It's kind of breakdancing. That's how it looked to me.
Yeah, I think I've saw like years ago. I saw like a Red Bull video. Like Red Bull were doing events, weren't they?
Yeah.
But it wasn't kind of. It was like a very small part of, I guess, what slacklining is, and that's the only kind of the part of it that was really shown to the public, and obviously not the general public. This was just people that watched like extreme sports TV and everything.
Yeah. So I did that for, I guess, the first 2 years of slacklining. And at the same time, I was doing all my school assignments with slacklining because I was like, hey, nobody does this. This is my thing, I'm going to profile as I'm the slackliner.
Yeah, sure.
So I had to do some kind of final internship. And I chose to do I had dreams to start my own business, to become a slackline teacher. And that sounded really cool to do that. So I said, hey, I'm gonna. You were able to make a choice in the college of if you wanted to specialize in some kind of business. How do you call it? Like part, and another profile that you could choose of like more.
Yeah, sure. Like a direction for your studies.
Yeah, exactly. You choose your own direction. So I chose the business, and I got into contact with a slackline reseller in the Netherlands. And he turned out to be also a teacher, but now he was only running a slackline online shop. And he was just starting to import a Swiss slackline brand. And he asked me to do all the workshops requests that he had. So I started doing slackline workshops, and I did an internship because the workshops were going really well, and I did an internship at him. His name was Jochem, and that's at that time the brand Slacktivity was still really small. It's a Swiss brand that he imported to the Netherlands and he distributed again. So part of the internship was spending time in actually Switzerland, see how they do it. So we could do the same in the Netherlands. So I spent a month in Switzerland for my internship, and I learned from at that time, he was also kind of a starting highliner, Samuel Vollery. At the moment, he's one of the best highliners there is. This guy does all slackline disciplines, and it's super amazing. He does crazy alpine projects. He's still a good friend of mine and a big inspiration. And yeah, he got me into highlining. Before I went there, I realized, damn, I have a huge amount of fear concerning highlining. And he was already doing alpine projects. And he had some GoPro footage of while you're looking down on an alpine highline. You call an alpine highline when it's like really high up in the Swiss mountains.
Yeah, sure.
Extreme stuff. That's where you gotta hike a few hours to get to the top, and then you rig a highline. And
so I have a question that I've literally been dying to ask you for ages, and it fits in with the alpine highline. How do you attach it to both sides?
It's always different. It's the biggest puzzle that you have to make, and that's why rigging can be really fun, because you really have to find the way of, hey, what are we going to do this time? Back in the days, we used to climb one tower, climb the other tower, and then you lowered something from one tower, and somebody would wait in the middle, and the other one lowered something, and then you pull it up, and you have one connection. That's what your connection.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Rope. We use a tagline, that's how we call it, from 2 millimeters or 3 millimeters. And on that you attach sometimes a bigger rope or directly the slack line, and then you just pull it in. Nowadays, we've got drones and we're flying over fishing rod.
Really?
And on the fishing rod, we connect the 2 millimeter the rope, and then we connect the 5 millimeter rope, and then we connect the main line.
Oh, amazing. I never thought of it like that. But I've always kind of thought, whoa, what a crazy puzzle. Like, do you have to climb down the mountain and go back up the other side carrying this like rope?
Yeah.
So where did you try your first highline then? Was it with the guy in Switzerland?
Yeah. It was an old garage in the industrial zone, and it was in the winter. I was there in November, so it was snowing, so we were happy to be inside. We had to climb some kind of steel pole, the ones that create that hold the roof.
Yeah, the girder.
The H profiles, and that's where we had our midline to. And I was kind of, all day that we were there, I was slacking off, literally. We also had a trick line on the bottom. I was good in the trick line, so I was showing off on the trick line. And at the same time, just leave it. I'll do it in a bit. Thank you. Friends over. We just had some lunch, and they were very kind to do the dishes. I'll do it. So yeah, it was only like 10 meters high, that first line. I was super scared. I was trying not to go all day, and we were kind of willing to take it down. And then my friends were like, "Hey, but Jonas, you should still go." I'm like, "Yeah, but no, but yeah." And like, "Okay, come on, we'll lead you in." And they literally pushed me on, and I was blocking out of fear, but important to know is that at that time I didn't dare to stand on any balcony. A balcony was already too high for me.
Really?
Or second floor, I would be scared.
Wow.
Super irrational fear I had. And I guess this just came because my mom had it, and nobody else that I knew had it, and I thought it was kind of maybe cute to be scared of something.
Yeah, sure.
Took it over, and I was actually scared of heights at that time.
Wow. Because I know you've told me before that you had a fear of heights, but I didn't realize it was that irrational and that sort of cute, like you say. Because I think most people have like a sort of instinctive fear of heights to a small level, and I would sort of say the same for myself for sure. Like, I could easily stand on the edge of a cliff or a balcony, like with no fear, but the idea of doing slackline, like a highline. Literally, I don't know how I would possibly do it. So I'm so interested to hear like how you overcame that.
Yeah. It was all possible because I wanted to do it, you know. I knew, hey, I'm slacklining. I want to make this my thing. I'm gonna encounter highlines, and then I don't want to block. I don't want to, you know, standing on a balcony, high ceiling, or looking over a valley. That is like an extra, you know. But doing a highline while you're a slackliner, that is your life goal.
Yeah,
It's different. So I started doing mental training just because I wanted to, do more highlining. So I started every night in my bed, just put on some nice music, and just started visualizing how it would be to try the highline. And that it really helped me because I could imagine how it was. I never did it at that time, but it just helped me to feel all the fears that were in me and in my head still continue. This was a very nice thing. This skill I learned in my speed skating and cycling career, because there they taught about mental training. At that time, it was kind of new still, but because we were kind of professionals, they were, we also always had like a training camp, and then they would try this out with us, and it just helped me also to prepare myself for the national championship, not to be like too nervous. So I used that method to prepare myself for highlining, and that's what made it possible not to freeze. It was still super scary at that moment, but the moment I was on, I knew, okay, I'm just gonna do it. I practiced this over 20 times in my head, just gonna do it now. So I did it. The funny thing was, on my first highline, I stood up, I walked, I send it. That's how we call it when you walk it all the way to the end. But then I didn't practice in my head the actual falling or stopping. Stop. So I did something which is really hard normally. It's turning around on the highline. Then I was tangled in the leash and I had to catch. And then I was like, whoa! The bubble of like super crazy flow states of like, it's happening, like super scared that I'm succeeding. That bubble snapped, so I was like,
And what was it? What did it feel like the first time you kind of fell from the highline?
Well, I grabbed it. I just in the beginning you're not. So if you're falling off a highline, you're connected to a leash, and you make some kind of, you're hanging underneath your highline.
Yeah, sure.
In the beginning, I didn't dare to. You gotta let go of control if you want to leash fall. That's kind of how it feels. The line is literally your ground, your foundation, your groundation. So if you fall in the air, you'll let go. That's how it feels. Okay, I'm diving in, you know?
Yeah.
So I did. So I grabbed the line and I was just holding on as much as
that's what I do.
That was my first experience. And but it was really liberating, you know, because it's the crazy thing about highlining is that all your nerves are, everything in your body screams, don't do this. And it's just your mind taking over and saying, okay, I'm gonna do this. This is safe. Because you have this irrational fear and your born fear, which is kind of rational, of like, okay, this is, if you're standing on an edge of a cliff, of course you will feel, okay, I should not go over now because then I die.
Yeah, that's the thing about heights, isn't it? There is a rational element to it, for sure. Most of the time where it expresses itself is irrational, but it is built on rationality, isn't it?
Yeah. In our nature, our intuition tells that we should not go over that edge because then we'll die.
Yeah, of course. And like on the slack line, like even when you're like your sort of primal brain doesn't know that exists unless you have the mental power to tell it so, which is a very difficult skill to master.
That is the essence of highlining. But it's amazing that you can do it. And it's also like, okay, I did this. I did it. And then I did it again. 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 And then I did
you were able to do that? Because I guess me personally, even though I'm not seriously scared of heights, I honestly, I honestly don't feel. I honestly feel like it's something I couldn't overcome. But like your fear of heights was much greater than mine, and you did do it through like obviously just some serious courage and determination and desire as well. I think from what you've said, like the desire was the most important factor for you.
Yeah.
But it does feel like an impossible, almost like an impossible feat.
Yeah, it was. I wasn't sure if I was going to succeed or not. And yeah, because I was with these Swiss guys, it definitely gave me a really strong foundation of being able to expose myself to these fears. Because in Switzerland, well, in the Netherlands, everything is below sea level. We have no mountains. In Switzerland, they grow up in between the mountains and they're just exposed to heights all the time. You know, that's part of. So these guys were doing fine. They were having their best time. They were playing on the Highline, and I couldn't imagine that yet. But because they had that courage, it definitely gave me, the courage to go over my own boundary.
Sure. So I'm super interested to know, does like looking at where you are now, does that fear ever completely disappear? Do you feel like 100% comfortable when you're up there, or is there always a bit of fear there?
Yeah, for sure. I definitely feel still some kind of like nowadays I don't see fear as per se something that blocks me or that stops me. It just makes me aware. I'm just very aware in these situations, and it feels nice to be in that state of mind of being super aware. And yeah, I can say I'm kind of addicted to that feeling in a way because it is so special to be so present.
Yeah. Do you feel like, I think I'm someone that probably doesn't face fear very often, but I think like that must be true of like 90% of the people on the planet, if not more, right?
Mhm.
Face fear in their day-to-day lives, in terms of like those sort of instinctive fears, not counting the fears that people obviously in poverty and that don't have security go through and everything every day, but just generally. And what do you think there's a lot of value in experiencing that on a regular basis?
100%. Yeah, I've conquered such a big fear of mine that there's in a normal life there's barely anything that scares me. You know, it's yeah. I'm not. Yeah, I'm almost overconfident because of it. I would say
Do you think
just know how to handle my fear, and if I'm scared for something, I know how to express myself and how to deal with it. And I'm kind of enjoying it. Like, whoa, wow. Am I
yeah,
scared of
sure.
this?
Do you think fear's like it's an actual thing that's common throughout every time we feel fear? Do you think it's the same thing? Do you know what I mean by that? Like
Mhm.
that fear you overcame with slacklining, would that do with I don't know, say the fear of going to an interview or something that seems completely different? Do you feel like it's the same fear? Because I think if you've never really faced fear that much and never overcome it, then it would be hard to tell the difference between different types of fear, or whether you feel there is a different type of fear, or
Yeah,
whether.
of course, there is a different kind of fear sometimes when you realize, okay, this is actually sketchy, you know what we're doing. And I know many slackline friends who definitely felt some moments that like, oh shit, we weren't scared, but this was actually scary. And that's sometimes the weirdest thing. The actual dangerous moments, sometimes you're not scared because it looks safe, but it's less safe than that scary moment. Um, Yeah, well, there's some kind of social fear, of course, that you can feel when you're in a situation and you just realize, like, oh, I should not make any mistakes now because that will turn out bad. And you feel weird because you're with your new family-in-law or so. But yeah, that's not the irrational fear, you know. That's just some kind of social fear, I guess.
Yeah, sure. I
Uh,
think. Do you think like what's the kind of fear that you get from a line? Say you did a slack line, but it's kind of not at ground level, but it's not a high line, but it's kind of a distance that you wouldn't be tied into, but it is still quite high off the ground, right? That exists.
yeah.
What's going on in that sort of situation?
Well, that's when it's actually dangerous, you know. Imagine you're 3 meters high and you're on the slack line, and if you can fall off out of control, and that's when you would like fall with your side first. So
Mm-hmm.
that's when you got to be super alert. It's kind of when I feel those moments. Can also be that you're doing a walk off. That's how we call it. On a high line, you always start 2 meters out of the edge, because if you would fall next to the edge, you will bang into the edge and you will smash your head in the rock. So that's where somebody called the no fall zone. And if you at the end of a line, the best feeling is to directly step on firm ground. You know, you're like, yeah, on slack line straight on the solid ground.
Yeah, I can imagine.
So then you get some kind of hyper focus of like, okay, now I cannot fall. And the
Amazing.
same when I'm trying to break my personal best and it's working out. And I mean, this, I would call that a flow state. And
Yeah,
it's
for
super
sure.
thing and you're nailing it, you know?
So what would you recommend? Say someone out there listening is thinking, this sounds cool. Like I want to try. What would you recommend to someone that wants to start out slacklining?
Just get a normal slackline kit or even a strap, a toe, a truck strap. How do you call that? Yeah, some industrial thing that you can walk on and just start playing with that. And just very short. I started 5 meters long. It's long enough because first it's a very specific skill. Often we assume that you're practicing your balance on a slackline, but you're practicing your balance on a slackline. Funny enough, when I started, so I did slacklining for 3 years, and then I started exploring yoga a little bit. And a tree pros would be super hard for me because my ankle reflex was just trained on having motion, and all of a sudden the ground was not moving, so I couldn't stand on solid ground. My leg was just shaking all the time. Used to that. So it's a very specific skill. So you just got to be trained to the specific skill as well. And
Sure.
with that, practice your balance. So,
So I've seen obviously recently over the time we've known each other, you've been getting more and more into like yoga and sort of alternative movement practices and just general like natural movement, I would call it, right? An explorative movement. Was that something that you've been doing for a long time, or is it indeed something you're sort of getting more and more into recently? And why is that so?
yeah, it's only something I've been exploring in the last 3 to 4 years, I'd say. Um, well, funny enough, is like we have to run multiple things into some kind of life happening, right? To start really learning from it.
Yeah, for sure.
So slacklining became my new identity, and I became really good in it. I started doing TV shows, doing performances. I called myself a professional slackliner. Yes, life goal achieved, you know? Professional dancer, professional speed skater, professional cyclist. Didn't make any of them, but I became the professional slackliner. And then I was doing so much slacklining above my skill as well, with highlighting mostly. If a highline is really hard and you're not succeeding yet on it, you're doing like 50 times standing up and falling down, which is really intense for your for your body, mostly your hips and your knees. Because the thing is, it doesn't matter how you do it, you just want to make it happen. It's all about the end result. So I was very I was making mono training on my body, doing the same movements all the time, every day. because I wanted to be able to walk that 70-meter long Highline at that time. And yeah, that resulted for me in I broke my meniscus during a show, a Highline performance. And that's kind of, there's still, my meniscus is still, has some kind of like cut in it. So there's movements that it will kind of pop, that's how I would say it, in maximum flex, and a little bit of exo rotation of my underleg. Then the meniscus comes under pressure and the bone runs over the scar tissue. So that's when it starts hurting, and it feels like it's dislocating my knee. It's not, it's just running over the scar tissue. Could you have surgery for that? But at the same time, they say it's not so good on the long term. My sports doctor really said, like, let's try not to. Let's first try everything else. And if it doesn't work, you'll do it. But on the long run, you'll be happy to still have your meniscus. Basically, it's also nice for a lot of dampening.
Yeah, for sure.
It's the only tissue between your lower leg and your upper leg. So it helps a lot with dampening. So it took me, first my approach was, okay, I'll go to a physiotherapist. I'll do what he says. I did that for a few months, and then I started slacklining. I came into old habits. I had to learn everything with my left leg instead of my right knee. I did that, and I was basically running in the same pattern. I noticed, so your body is always warning before an injury of overuse is going to happen. And I noticed the warnings that my left knee gave me. After a long car drive, it was locked. I couldn't bend it for a minute or so. It was like, what? I had to try a few things, and all of a sudden it did it again. So I was like, okay, I cannot be doing this, Slacklining is my identity, it's my work, it's my passion, but it's not worth it to destroy my body when I was 26. Not worth it. So I took a step back with highlining. I thought I retired from highlining in that way, but then via some slackline festivals that were co-organized on movement festivals, some guys who were really into movement kind of convinced me to start practicing with them. And I was still slacklining, but not on my top level of my best self, just on some kind of halfway of my potential,
Sure.
Just able to do without overusing my body. And they taught me new ways of thinking, basically, that my body is, I thought I would never be able to use my leg anymore in the way that I did. And they told me, they explained me a lot about that it's mostly my mind thinking that. And I'm also injured in my brain because, that is what I was running into all the time. So you start believing that you cannot use your body and your knee is broken and I cannot train anymore with it and it will hurt all the time. I saw myself as some kind of, how they explain it, as fragile.
Yeah, sure.
It really helped me to realize what it was. Maybe for the people that don't know the anti-fragile term, like imagine I have this cup. This cup is fragile. If I'll drop it, it will break. Under stress, it will break. There is a specific moment that the stress is too big for the cup, because if I drop it on this yoga mat, still fine. It'll break.
Don't ruin your cup just for the podcast.
But on the solid ground, it will break. And the body is different than that. It's not like that. It will always. The thing is that if you would drop it, if your body will fall, it will gain strength. Every time you put stress on it, it will gain strength. And that's the anti-fragile term. So by realizing that, I understood, hey, I should just try some things again. And I realized I can do so much more than I was doing. Because I was kind of avoiding all the small knee angles. I didn't dare to sit in a squat. I didn't dare to sit on my knees. I didn't do any kind of weird squats. All these, I was avoiding them because I thought I'm injured and it will hurt my knee more. And yeah, and they convinced me to do otherwise. So that was a really nice reset for my brain to start using my body again in full capacity. And I realized as well that where I am right now, maybe just instead of kneeling, just sitting on my knees like this is already a big step for me, you know?
Yeah, sure. That's amazing.
Comparing myself with myself and not per se with my ideal picture of how you should kneel.
Yeah. I think like injury seems very common in people that are like movement enthusiasts. I think like you obviously listen to the podcast with Theo, and I think Theo's had like 3 knee surgeries now. And he's as the same as you, like almost learnt the lesson the hard way. Like you can't, if you go 100% hard for a period of your life, no matter how young you are, like there is going to be negative effects for the positives as well. And that line with movement, there is a fine line between what's good for you and what's bad for you, right?
Yeah. You really got to tune in with your body. You got to feel what is actually happening. And if you feel slightly tired, you better take some rest. So tomorrow you can train again instead of being like half training today.
Yeah, for sure. And I think that's one of the reasons why this thing we call movement, people weren't really using that term like a few years ago, right? And I think the reason it's become so popular is because we're realizing from people who are fanatical movers to just casual movers, like doing excessive movement or excessive exercise or these things that we do aren't actually in the best interests of like how our body naturally moves, right?
No.
So that's why that's why movement is becoming so important. It's because people are seeing how fundamental it is to move our body in these natural ways that might not be the same as lifting a heavy weight or doing a handstand or running a marathon, but they're actually doing amazing things for our bodies.
Yeah, it's a great exploration.
For sure. So what does sort of, you've obviously spent your life doing all these different disciplines and ended up finding a love of slacklining and exploring all these alternative movements now to support that. And seems from what I'm hearing, like you found kind of like a great place that you're in now. You feel like grounded. So from your experience, like what does movement mean to you?
Yeah, it's giving me a reason to live. it's who I am. Yeah, it's giving me a platform to be and to share with others, and that's so nice about it. I tried once studying to become a pilot, and I realized this doesn't make me happy. And it just makes me really happy to share this with others. And that's why I'm also a teacher now, because I believe the most important thing we can do in life is to move, because otherwise everything will be stuck. And yeah, having even some basic everyday movement will just help you to process big life struggles.
Absolutely.
So sharing that with others and living that life myself is the best way how I can teach as well. Like I feel like the best teacher is not telling you what to do, but it's showing you what to do. And the more I think of it, the more I realize, this is my calling. You know, I have other hobbies as well. I like to play vinyl records on parties as well, you know, but I'm not gonna make that my main thing because it's just a sidetrack, you know. It's not my calling. And moving and sharing that with others, educating others about that, it's giving me all my reason to live. This is now my identity. That's what I made my identity. So that's nice. You know,
Yeah,
it's
amazing,
not,
man.
It's not relying on being the best or doing this show or being in this TV program. It's this is who I am and this is what I gotta give, and I'll give that in every way I can contribute in my area. Like I'm gonna start teaching kids now in my hometown, which was something I always thought like, it's like I'll do that when I'm old, But now I feel like, wow, this is so fun and it gives me so much joy. And all these kids, if they see me, they go fucking mental. I'm almost there. Like, wow, Jonas, hey!
I've got to mention that Jonas texted me the other day and the kids were making fun of the outfit that he was wearing, saying that it wasn't school regulation outfit. He was wearing So We Flow. And and then he told them that he was sponsored by them and felt pretty awesome, right?
And it was so funny because this girl, she was just kind of trying to burn me. It's always a game, This is high school. It's so funny. In elementary school, I'm really only playing with these kids, and that's where we're having our connection. And in the high school, they always first want to try to burn you to see how strong is this guy mentally, It's attacking me on everything. And she said, "Yeah, hey, but your clothes don't look so sporty." And I told them like, "Yeah. Well, this is for me what is sporty. I'm not wearing anything else than I normally would when I would be sporting, And I happen to be sponsored by this brand." And then all the other guys were like, "Ooh."
Well, I'm glad that they got it, right? They got the idea. They got the concept. So, Jonas, it's been an absolute pleasure to have you on. Is there anything you'd like to share with the listeners before we part ways, like where they can find your content, where they can hook up with you, like ask you questions, anything like that?
Yeah, well, I want to thank you as well. If you want to be following my slackline adventures, you got to just find me writing down my full name, which is complicated.
It's taken me like, I don't know how long we've known each other, maybe like 2 years, do you reckon? And it took me at least a year to be able to type it right without reading it again.
But once you got it, you will not forget it. That's also the nice.
No, never.
So probably the best is go to So We Flow, go to the followers or following, type in Jonas, and then you see my last name, Konijnenberg. In English, I will probably pronounce it like Konijnenberg.
That's how I would say it. I'd say Jonas Konijnenberg.
Yeah. You can find me on Instagram or Facebook. I guess that's where I'm mostly active, and I'll just share my full lifestyle on there, which also includes the vinyl records, but movement, mostly slacklining in the nature, because that what makes me the most happy. And that's big part why I also slackline and why I'm still slacklining. You have to go to nice places, and that's fulfilling me the most, and that's what I guess I can share. If I have to give one life rule, go somewhere where you are challenged and where you feel like you want to be as well,
Awesome, man. I'm glad you just threw that gem out at the end of the podcast. Were you saving that one?
Exactly.
Yeah. Cheers, brother. Well, thank you so much. And take it easy.
Yeah, you too, Jake.